one to post online. So, and since you guys now are the lead class, B Day gets the first round and A Day is playing catch up now. So if this continues, which it probably will, you guys get an extra day at the end of the semester going, yeah, we're done. Okay. So that'll be good for you. But let's go ahead and do the screen share here and talk about this. What we're doing today, right, is the Bill of Rights that pertains to your legal rights. And this is the most complicated section. And I doubt you'll ever forget it because of the trial that's taking place right now. It's one of the most high-profile trials ever in American history. It's going to cause a reaction regardless of what the jury decides. They're in deliberations right now. That means they're in a private room with just the jury, 12 of them, deciding this case. And whatever they come up with, there's going to be a reaction. So I'm just preparing you in advance. I've seen these reactions before on some high public profile trials. The last one was 25 years ago in LA, the Rodney King case. LA just erupted with that decision. The other one, now that one didn't really count. It was O.J. Simpson trial. That was a different story, I think. But there's very few trials in history that had this kind of worldwide impact. Now, I have not normally, if we had a normal class, a normal political environment, normal situation, we would have played clips of every day because it's a big public trial. It's gone on for over 2 weeks, over 40 witnesses, as you'll see, and had a little discussion every day. But we can't do that in today's environment. We just don't have the time. But we just showed you the opening day, right? And then we're going to show you the closing arguments, which were made. And then we're not going to do much with that. We're just going to show you that it happened. Because we're not taking sides in this. I'm not taking a side. Why? I'm not on the jury. It's not my place to take a side. There's only 12 people on the planet that will have sat there and listened to every word. And those 12 people will make a determination. And this will probably be the most controversial thing I'll say today. But we got to respect the jury verdict regardless of what they come up with. We'll all have an opinion. We're entitled to your opinion, but if you believe in the Constitution as I do, you have to respect the verdict that the jury comes up with. Otherwise, we have no legal process. And I'll try to prove that for you today. We have to have a thing called due process of law. And as we're going through this, it would be helpful, I think, if you put your computers away and listen, because this is going to be the bulk of your study guide coming up, which will drop tomorrow. And it's the last portion of your state test. So you need to focus on this one, okay? All right, because you're going to get these state test questions and it'll wrap up your state test questions. By the way, everybody that's turned in all the study guides so far is passing the state test. So this is the last stumbling block to get through that exam, okay? All right, so when the trial started, I used it as an excuse, if you will, to teach you the differences between civil and criminal cases. Can you tell me the differences? What's the difference between a civil case and a criminal case? Yeah.
So a civil case is when someone is mad at another person, but they're talking about something wrong. In criminal cases when someone broke the law.
Okay, so I'm going to just correct your wording just a little bit. You can be upset with somebody, but there has to be something involved, like a contract with money and stuff.
There's no illegal action.
Yeah, but in the absence of a what? Of a law passed by who? Who passes the laws that can make something a crime? Not the courts. Who's the only group that can pass a law? This is really important that you get this right. Now, thank you for answering. Let's clarify this for everybody. in the case we're talking about in Minnesota, who passed the laws defining first, second, third degree murder, manslaughter, and all that? Who passed those laws defining that as a crime? The state legislature of Minnesota. They defined these. See, there is no first, second, third, and fourth degree murder on the federal level. The US Congress does not deal with those kinds of cases. These kinds of cases are dealt state by state by state, and each state then has to define its own laws that you can be arrested for under like robbery and things like that. Does that make sense? It's federal what? What's the term for it? What's the term where you have some laws determined at the national level and others at the state level? Federalism. So what we're talking about here is a state trial. This is not a national trial. It does not involve our federal court system. And it's not a law, right? These are not laws that are punishable under the federal legal system. It's the state of Minnesota that wrote the laws that's doing these cases. Everybody clear on that? All right, so that's kind of an important thing. So thank you for, you have to know that. You have to know that. Okay, so let's go ahead now. And the civil cases I gave you an example is you're paying rent. Well, let's do this one. Okay, bug sprayers. Okay, we get lots of bug sprayers down in St. George. They spray for bugs. There's lots of bugs, tarantulas. There's all sorts of, scorpions and things like that. So they spray, and you still get ants in the house. So you refuse to pay. That is a civil case. There's no crime committed. Oh, you did a bad job of spraying our yard. We're not going to pay you. Wait a minute. We did a great job of paying your yard, but those ants are, that's going to take 3 or 4 applications. You get in a dispute. No crime. There's no state legislature or city council that has written a rule about that. So you go to court and you say, no, you should have let them put another application, so you need to pay them. Or no, you should let that go because as a company, you should have done a better job. That is civil law. Criminal law can take away your what? Life, liberty, or property. In extreme cases, it's the death penalty. We call those capital offenses. Or it could be go to prison. Civil cases, no prison time. Criminal cases, yes. Okay. All right. So then this trial, we just gave you the opening arguments. This is a criminal case. It's the most high profile case in decades. It's a worldwide case, you must understand. And you could have watched the whole thing, every minute of it if you wanted to, because it's public. Okay, we'll explain why in a bit. Okay, so here we go. Here's the closing arguments for yesterday.
Death on Minneapolis street. His face becoming an icon of a nationwide reckoning over race and police use of force. Ed Gutierrez is there and leads off our coverage. After 45 witnesses and 14 days of testimony.
14 days of testimony and 45 witnesses. Some called for the defense, some called for the prosecution. In these cases, here's how it goes. It goes like this. First of all, there's an indictment listing the charges. Where does that indictment come from? Before this trial can even start, there has to be an indictment. Who writes the indictment? A grand jury that's in secret, right? You guys remember that? Secret grand jury? Why would you have a secret meeting to issue charges against somebody? Yeah, why would you besmirch someone's character or whatever if you didn't have reasonable what? What's the terminology in the law? Before you can issue an indictment, the grand jury has got to have what? What are the 2 words, the key words here? We're reviewing. I've taught you this. Okay, I'm not going to answer that. Reasonable cause. Reasonable cause. You have to have reasonable cause. Does that mean you have 100% security, totally know 100% that somebody may have committed a crime? No, it's a low bar. But there's got to be enough evidence to give you reasonable cause to issue an indictment. All that happens in secret in the grand jury. Well, once the indictment is read aloud, then it's public. Why do we shift then from private, quiet, don't talk about it, to, oh, now public? Yes.
Because just even being considered that you did something wrong is not ruin your public image.
That's exactly right. It could ruin your whole life. You go to jail, right? So we want to now know and observe as people that there is a due process, that the person was treated fairly under the law. We have a case in Russia right now, Navalny's his name. He was arrested arbitrarily by Putin because he's a political opposition leader who wants to run against him for president. And so he tried to poison him, kill him twice. He survived all that. Then he shows up to the Soviet Union, or Russia, sorry, and wants to run for president. And he immediately gets arrested. And now he's in jail in a hunger strike, and he may not survive the day. That's an arbitrary arrest. Oh, that's done in secret. The charges are all in secret. Everything's in secret. In China, they arrest people and they hold them in secret trials. And suddenly you're in jail. You don't even know what happened. So we've got to have at some point a due process, and we have to be able to see it. So here's this this trial. Here we go. Let's keep going.
Tonight, Derek Chauvin's fate is in the hands of the jury.
You can believe your eyes.
During closing arguments today, in excruciating detail, prosecutors reminded jurors of Floyd pinned under Chauvin's knee for 9 minutes and 29 seconds.
George Floyd's final words on May 25, 2020 were, "Please, I can't breathe." He said those words to the defendant. He asked for help with his very last breath.
Floyd's death sparked worldwide protests and reignited a social justice movement.
We'd like to thank the community and also like to thank everybody around the world for standing together with us in solidarity.
But in the courtroom today, prosecutors tried to keep the jury's focus on the actions of one police officer, not the whole system.
This is not an anti-police prosecution. It's a pro-police prosecution.
Chauvin is facing 3 charges: second and third degree murder and second degree manslaughter. If convicted, the most serious charge carries up to 40 years in prison.
Okay, now let's go through those charges. Let's go through it. And if we get back here, get a picture of it. Might have to play.
One police officers, not the whole system.
This is not an anti-police prosecution. It's a pro-police prosecution.
Chauvin is facing 3 charges: second and third degree murder.
Okay, so those are the 3 charges. All right. Where did the charges come from? The grand jury, who issued an indictment. The indictment carries these 3 charges. Now, who defined these as crimes? Who did? Minnesota State Legislature. Every state defines these slightly differently. These aren't the same in every state. Utah, now listen, first degree murder. Why isn't first degree murder up there? Do you know the definition of first degree murder? It means you're planning this, that you're premeditating. You're going to do this right beforehand. There was no premeditation here. So there's no way that charge fits. This charge, this charge, this charge. But wait a minute, aren't they kind of all the same charge, really?
Sometimes there's accidentally murdering.
Oh, there you go. Listen, here's the thing. The indictment came with second, third, and second degree manslaughter. Now, the penalties are really low for this one, but also the evidence needed to prove this is a lot less. You get up here, second degree murder, you better fit that definition 100%. Now, the 12 jurors, do they have to decide on all 3? No. They can, now listen to my wording very carefully, acquit or find not guilty on the 1 and the 2 and just go with the 3rd one. Or they could find guilty here and not guilty here and here. The jury does not have to, they literally, it's three separate cases because these are three different definitions of the law. And trust me, they will have the law in front of them. And as a jury, they will say, everything we listen to, does it fit this definition? If it doesn't, then they need to acquit. Right? How many jurors does it take to say acquit? That it goes away. Of the 12 jurors, how many do you need, prosecution, how many they need to convict someone? 12. See, here's the thing. The prosecution has got to convince 100% on any one of these charges. The defense, all they have to do is meet the standard of reasonable doubt. If you have a reasonable doubt, you've got to convict beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what it says in the Constitution. Beyond a reasonable doubt. If they get one juror that has a doubt, then guess what? No conviction. No conviction. No conviction. That make sense? Here's what a lot of people don't understand about the Constitution. The Constitution is written to protect the rights of the accused defendant. In this case, the police officer. The Constitution was not written to make it easy to send somebody to jail. It was written specifically to protect from false accusations, against lack of evidence, against sending an innocent person to jail. If once in a while a guilty person gets off, many people will say, better that than have an innocent person go to jail.
And unfortunately, a lot of that.
Yes, that's right. I mean, bad things can happen, right? Now, here's the thing. When the jury makes this decision, can it be appealed to a higher court? No. The jury verdict is final and cannot be appealed. Are you with me? Can't be appealed. What can be appealed is the process. Due process of law. For example, #1 case in American history, Miranda. Guy in Arizona, Miranda case, led to the Miranda warning. You hear it on every cop show. Miranda's arrested for some petty crime. He goes in, they arrest him, they take him into the interrogation room, they get a confession out of him. And then they go to court and they say, da, 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 and he gets found guilty, goes to jail, but then it gets appealed. Why? Because he didn't have a lawyer present. If you're nervous, if you're upset, if maybe you don't speak English very well, can you get into a bad situation?
Yeah.
So that's why a lawyer should be there to protect your rights. We protect the rights of the accused in our Constitution. And so Miranda was like, oh, and from then on, you have to read somebody their Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Do not open your mouth at all without your lawyer present and talking to a lawyer, because you may not be in an emotional state to make the right decisions. Is that clear to all of you? Protect yourself. You know you're innocent. I'm going to explain this all to the police, whatever. You can dig yourself into a hole without even knowing it, thinking you're doing the right thing. But your lawyer will say, hey, I'm an objective person. I'm sitting off to the side. I'm watching this thing. I think we should stop for a minute and we need to talk and about your rights. Does that make sense? Okay, now this trial, it's really like no other in modern times. I mean, you got to go back. But let's talk about this jury trial being, you can't overturn it. The case happened in England before we even had an American Revolution. It involved one of the people that was responsible for Pennsylvania, William Penn. William Penn was a Quaker. And as a Quaker, he thought he could preach his Quaker religion, but they had passed a law in England that said only Anglicans can and Catholics, you know, the only 3 religions they allowed to preach. All the other religions, especially Quakers, they couldn't preach in public. They couldn't go on a public corner and start preaching, right? That was against the law. Penn is arrested for giving a public sermon. He goes to court and a jury is convened. So there's a jury of his peers, literally. And Penn, you know, the judge is saying, well, it's open and shut case. I mean, Penn, did you preach? Yeah, I preached, whatever. The jury acquitted, though. The jury said, this is really a stupid thing to send somebody to jail for. They made their judgment. The judge got ticked at the jury, put them all in jail till they changed their minds and started to charge him fines. You know he's guilty. You go into jail until you can come up with the right verdict. Hello? That's when one of the jurors, being a very prominent person, took advantage of something in our Constitution, but it's also in the English Constitution, called habeas corpus. He appealed to another higher court and said, we're being held unjustly here. Habeas corpus means bring forth the body. So the jurors were brought to the higher court, and the higher court said, to force a jury to change his mind is absurd. It destroys the whole process. The jury verdict is final. And the judge cannot, it's called jury nullification. A judge cannot nullify a jury verdict. If it's a process question, you didn't get a lawyer present, right? That kind of thing, then you can appeal it. You can only appeal the process. Was the process fair? You cannot appeal the verdict. All right, with that as an understanding, let's go to the Constitution. I need you to go to the Constitution, the copy we have here at Cornell University. Everybody, this is on your phones and so on. This is the last piece in the puzzle, and I've been saving it specifically for today, in your state test. Now, when you go to the Constitution, you guys, you know, we've kind of covered the basics there in that first set of articles. Articles 1 through 7 were written before the Bill of Rights by 2 years. The original Constitution went into effect, George Washington took the oath, Congress met before this was even written. When they wrote the Constitution, the biggest criticism is you left out the important stuff, the Bill of Rights, protecting people's rights. And they admitted, yeah, we blew it, you know, we should have done it. So Madison and many people that voted for the Constitution says, only if you promise to go back and write this Bill of Rights. So the first 10 amendments are the Bill of Rights. Now, 1, 2, and 3, you kind of know already. But the important part for us, all of us, is 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Let's go through it. Let's do 4 right now, search and seizure. Now, some of this is going to sound familiar. Now, what I love about the Cornell site, so it'll make it really easy for you to do your study guide. So let's go ahead, the Bill of Rights, 4th Amendment. They give you a little yellow section, which is a summary. Okay? Before you, it was written 240 years ago. So, right? You need a little help sometimes understanding it. And they do a great job with this. This is their law school, by the way. It's the law school version. The 4th Amendment originally enforced the notion of each man's home is his castle. That was a real big thing back in the American Revolutionary days. Goes back to John Locke theory, which we'll talk about, well, maybe not this year, but anyway, to secure from unreasonable searches and seizures of your property. It protects against arbitrary arrest. You can't just arrest people because you think they might look guilty, who knows? And you can't barge into their house unless you have a search warrant. You have to give enough evidence to a judge to get a warrant before you can go into somebody's home. So for example, the police suspect, hey, you know, this person has a meth lab in their basement. Judge will say, how do you know that? What's your reasonable suspicion here? Give me some evidence. Well, they bought all these chemicals and we saw them hauling them into the house as we drove by. What chemicals were they? Are they used to meth? The judge asks all those questions. The judge says, okay, here's a warrant, but it's specific to where they can search. And you can't do a wiretap. You can't listen to somebody's conversation. You can't have, you know how the technology is right now. Somebody could be sitting across the street here and listen to every word I'm saying with the tech we have today, right? You can't do that if you're a law enforcement officer unless you have a court permission to do it. This is called our privacy amendment. So let's just read it carefully. The right of people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. No warrant shall issue but upon, and here's the key wording of today so far, probable cause. Supported by oath or affirmation. Did you see these chemicals? Do you have from the store? Did you check on that? Yes. Okay, we did. Then you have to describe where you're going to search. It's probably in the basement, but it may be in the garage. And then they can search those two places. And the persons or things to be seized. You're looking for specific things. You're not just going at random and you finding something. Let's just break into the house until we find a crime. You can't do that. That's 4. 4 is really important. That's your privacy amendment. 5th, this is the one most people know a little bit about. This is the Miranda one. The 5th Amendment creates a number of rights relevant to criminal and civil legal proceedings too. In criminal cases, the 5th Amendment guarantees the right to a grand jury. In other words, before somebody can just accuse you and it all goes public, you have a chance to have the prosecution has got to present to a large jury. Now, this is more than 12. It's usually 22, 25, something like that. And that jury has to be basically said there's probable cause before they issue the indictment and the charges like you saw. So this probably took 2 months. The prosecutors presented, there's no defense attorneys in there. It's just the prosecution convincing over 20 people that there's enough evidence to actually have a real trial and to issue an indictment. The indictment comes from the grand jury, not from the judge. The judge is there to make sure the process is right. Then it forbids double jeopardy. Who can tell me what that means? Oh, okay. All right. Now, in the case of this officer, if they acquit on second-degree murder, could they find new evidence and charge him again for this same crime? No. But wait. After this trial is over, could this person stand trial for a federal crime of violating somebody's civil rights? And yes, there is a law prohibiting that. Can they be tried for that? Yes. And one person asked last, well, okay, found acquitted of second-degree murder. What if they committed another murder? Well, that's a separate thing. So yes, you can be tried for that, obviously, right? So this may not end right away. There could be separate federal charges on a national level that this officer, there'd be another grand jury meeting right now on that you don't know anything about, we don't know anything about. Okay, so, but it has to be different crime. Can't be those same crimes. Okay, that's double jeopardy. Protects against self-incrimination. Okay, this officer, right, chose not to testify. Now, why would it be a good idea not to testify? Because I've heard some people say this, and it drives me nuts when they do. Well, if you plead the Fifth Amendment and you don't testify, then it means you're guilty. What? No, 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 it doesn't. Why was it a good idea not to force somebody to testify in their own defense? Yeah. Take it. Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Oh, you're just adjusting your mask. Why is it a good idea? Why in this case did this officer and his lawyer get together and said, look, we're not going to put you on the stand. We're not going to make you, by the way, these are close proximity things. We're talking about the box where the witnesses are right here and the defendant sitting about that far away with the judge right here. These are very intimate settings. These rooms are not very big. The jury's sitting right over there against that wall. The jury room may be only twice as big as this. You're close in proximity. Why would it be a smart idea perhaps not to testify? Did you have your hand up on this one? Go for it.
I was going to say that, like, it's a lot of pressure and stuff, and you might start stumbling, and people think, oh, you not have your story straight, so there's going to be some flaws to it.
If you stumble and the story doesn't line up, the jury's going to jump to conclusions. That is probably the biggest liability. You get nervous and you forget the timeline, or you say something, you stumble. Do people sweat? People interpret that. Now, I'm sorry, I know it's not fair, but people are human, right? And by the way, are there some people who are more articulate than others? So if you're articulate and your lawyer thinks you can handle it and not stumble, I'm deaf in one ear. I probably won't hear the question correctly. My lawyer would say, make sure you ask him to repeat the question. And if you don't understand it completely, make sure you get it in writing, which you can do. But I miss a lot. I can't watch a TV program without having the subtitles because I can't follow it. The trouble in here for me right now is I lip read and I can't see your mouths. So I have to ask, can you repeat a little louder, right? Don't put me on a stand. So it doesn't mean that the person's guilty, like some people like to say. And I just think it's a shame when people say things like that. But anyway, the point is, he chose not to. Now, the judge, in a very powerful moment, the judge says, okay, to the defendant, is it your decision not to testify? And he said, yes, it is. Did anybody push you to make that decision? This is of your own free will. Yes, it was. Okay. By the way, I don't think the jury was in the room at that moment. Right? I think the jury was out when that took place. They take the jury out of the room so they can't interpret it one way or the other. Good discussion on that. It also requires due process of law. Now, here's the thing. Well, if you're going to take somebody's life, liberty, property away from them, it requires the government, okay, let's skip this last part because this has to do with eminent domain. It's a wholly separate issue. But there has to be a process. And if they don't follow the process, now right now, there is going to be an appeal on process already. We know it because of some outside things that have happened. And that's totally legit. Some high profile people made some comments that they shouldn't have made. And this whole trial could be thrown out on appeal. And then what they do is they have the trial over again. Whoa. All right, let's go to the next. Let's read it. Here we go. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising from the land or naval forces or in the military. Whoa, time out. Do these same rules apply in the military? No. Congress has written a separate legal system for the military called the Uniform Code of Military Justice, or UMCJ. And when you go in the military, they teach you the UMCJ. You don't get the same rights. The trial by jury thing doesn't happen. It's a group of officers. Yes, you get a defense attorney. Yes, you get prosecutor attorney, but by the same token, it's a fundamentally different process. There's no bail, anything like that. The truth of the matter is it's a different system completely, and it's outlined here. Okay, now, nor shall any person be subject to the same offense, be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against themselves, nor deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The process is the only thing that can be appealed, not the jury verdict. All right, now, there's more in there that doesn't have to do with trials, but let's go ahead and now get to the sixth one. Go to the Sixth Amendment. Now, you're going to have to do this on your study guide. This is the last checkoff for your state test. And by the way, this is the hard part. These are the hardest ones to keep straight, man. They just are. So let's go ahead and do criminal prosecutions now. Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment guarantees the right of criminal defense, including the right to a public trial without necessary delay. In other words, we have to be speedy with our trials. Now, sometimes I think, why do these take forever? It was 2 weeks. Yeah. Okay, once the trial's going, but the point is you can't slow this down for years. You have to try to have it as quickly as possible. And you have the right to a lawyer, right to an impartial jury. So before this group of 12 was selected, they had what we call the jury selection process. A big pool of people, probably 50, more maybe, were brought in. It could be 100. Brought in, and they interviewed each one. Prosecuting attorney and defense attorney can now say, nope, not that person, nope, not that person, if they feel they can't be impartial, if they have some sort of bias that's going to present, a problem where they've already made up their mind, say, for example, or whatever. Some don't have to serve. For example, I got heart surgery tomorrow. This guy's depending on my life. So doctor, yeah, you don't get to serve, come, we'll get you next time. But the selection of the jury is about as important a process as any to find an impartial jury. Okay, now, have jurors in the past been bribed? Have jurors in the past been threatened? Then there would be a mistrial. And they do it all over again. Or if they catch it, say a juror is talking to the press. Oh yeah, this happened and this happened and this happened. And we're in the jury room. No. They have another pool of alternate jurors. So they pick the 12, and then they're usually a half a dozen or more that listen to the whole thing as well. And they will replace those jurors if necessary. It doesn't happen very often. But what if somebody gets COVID? What if they come down with coronavirus, right? Or gets really sick and ends up in the hospital? Well, they have an alternate juror. You don't go with 11 or 9 or 10. You have the right to know who your accusers are. So that's what I'm saying is really important. So you're sitting right there, right? And the prosecution is going to call, in this case, over 30 witnesses, and you got to be face to face with that person. Now, I have been in a jury. I've been on a jury. And this is why I feel so strongly about the jury verdict being, we should respect it. Because it's tough. In our case, it was a low-level drug offense. It was like, this was meth. It was 2 kids, though. You got a parent there with 2 kids, and you're going to send them to the county jail for 6 months? You can't weigh that. You've got to look, here's the law, here's the crime, here's the evidence, and you have to weigh that, and it's tough. These are tough decisions. So I'm not going to second guess the jury. I'm just not going to do it. Then there was a case where I was hanging around with another guy, and there was a scream, and it turned out somebody was actually literally trying to kill someone. And we got there in time. And this person who obviously been living on the street for a while, just scraggly as can be, called to testify. This close. And that person that was on the street, hair was cut, wearing a suit, looked like $1 million, like they just came off of Wall Street. And you got to look them straight in the eye. It's intimidating, people. It's scary as hell. And I don't mind using that swear word in this case because it is. But you got to do it. You got to be brave. You got to do your part. You can't lie. You got to tell the truth. The whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help you God. That's what they say, make you swear. It's scary. Intimidating. In this case, they went for a lesser charge, the prosecution did, because they wanted to get this person off the street because they weren't on their medication. That's what led to it. Got a 7-year sentence at the state pen. Got out in 4 for good behavior, 3.5 for good behavior. Found his way home to Connecticut. Scary. But he had the right to look me straight in the eye. And I had the obligation to look him straight in the eye. Is that the person, da 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 da? When I saw him, da 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 da, but this is the person the police arrested. Yeah, there you go. Involving cases, okay, there's other things in here. The right to protection of witnesses, including victims of crime. For example, the girl that shot the video on her smartphone, right? Where'd my phone go? It's in there. Okay. That shot the video was underage at the time. Now, does that underage person have to sit there and look at the accused? No. If they're underage, it's different. In the state of Minnesota, they actually interviewed this person in another room with a screen around them so they couldn't see who they were. And all you heard was the voice, right? And that was given to the jury because they're underage. A minor, a younger person is not, you would not be forced to testify like I had to do at your age. Hit 18, different story. right? So this person was underage when she was 17 when it happened, so she didn't have to face that intimidating situation. All right, so all criminal prosecutions, okay, all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and the district where the crime shall have been committed. They couldn't have held this trial in Salt Lake City. It had to be done in Minneapolis. Which district shall previously ascertained by law, in other words, the state law was written against those three accusations, and be informed of the nature and causes of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against them and have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses. So say a witness that you need for your defense says, I don't want to testify. I'm sorry, I don't want to do this. There's actually one. I don't want to do it. Can they just say, I'm sorry, you have to come anyway? What's it called where you compel somebody to come to that court? What do they issue to a person? What's the word? And don't say warrant. That's when you're looking for evidence. Say again? No, but that's what it does. It triggers, you have to go. If you get one of these, you have to go. What's it called? What do they issue? Yeah, it's often called a summons. That's right. Yeah. And now what if you say, sorry, not going? Then they'll send the court bailiff to arrest you and drag you to court. And if you refuse to testify on behalf of whoever needs you to testify, then you can go to jail for that. It's called contempt of court. I'm sorry, I don't want to get involved. I'm sorry, but you're a witness. But no. Okay, contempt of court, go to jail until you're willing to talk. Or pay this huge fine. Because we're protecting the rights of the what? The accused. This officer deserves this. It says this, a process for obtaining witnesses in your favor. And the last one here, to have assistance of counsel for the defense. Miranda didn't get his lawyer. That's not right. Does that make sense to y'all? You have questions at this point? Okay, this actually went the best of any class so far. Okay, so I appreciate you guys jumping in. Seventh Amendment kind of tells us the difference between criminal and civil cases, right? So we're just gonna kind of skip that one for now because we already kind of talked about that. And then we're gonna go the Eighth Amendment. Now the Eighth Amendment, often mentioned as in context of the death penalty, but it's broader than that. The Eighth Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishment, but also talks about excessive fines and bail. All right, now, tensions are high right now, and I'm preparing you, no matter how this goes down, no matter what the jury comes up with, there's going to be a reaction. There's going to be a reaction. Brace yourself. Brace yourselves. For me, it's easy. I'm going to respect the jury's decision. For other people, they've already made up their mind. And if it doesn't comport with the decision they've already pre-made in their heads, and remember, they weren't there for every day of the trial. They weren't there in that intense environment. They weren't participating in this. They probably don't even know the process, but they've made up their mind. They're not letting the process play out. But here's one. If tensions couldn't have gotten any higher, guess what happened a week ago? An officer, 26-year veteran, reaches for what she claims is, and I'm not going to say, no judgments here, but is going for a taser, grabs the gun instead and kills somebody in the town directly north of where this trial is taking place in the same week this is happening. Tensions are explosive in Minneapolis right now and across the country. Now, this officer, right, was given bail, was charged. It was a quick charge. Was charged with a crime, but is out on bail. Now, what does that mean? And why is it a good thing that this officer's out on bail? And what is bail? Yeah, you pay a fee. You don't pay anything. You put money into a bank account.
It's like a safety deposit.
Exactly. That's a good way to say it. That says if you don't come to court on the day you're asked to come to court to listen to the charges and whatever, and to plead guilty or not guilty, it's really early in the system, then you forfeit that money. That's why you see all these bail bonds, and I think it's a scam, by the way. These bail bonds, and if you can't come up with the money, they'll loan you the money. But then if you skip bail, then they're going to send the bounty hunter after you. Have you ever heard about that? These are private businesses. Never mind. I just don't like that whole system. But by the same token, why is it good that we offer people bail and they can get out if they're not a danger to the community? And this person is not going to be a danger to the community, no question about that. So why do we want them out? Remember, the purpose here is to defend the rights of the accused. So what can this person do now that they're out? Prep for the trial. Meet with their attorneys. Keep working to pay the bills. What if it goes through and not guilty, acquitted? Bail is a good thing. It allows people the freedom to go on until things get to trial. It just says you're going to show up when we ask you to. Now, what if you're a danger to the community? Like that person that shot up the FedEx thing 2 weeks ago, killed 6 people? That person is not getting bail because they're a danger to the what? Community. Or they set the bail, they give bail, but they set it so high that it can't be met. Say that again. Yeah, that's if they're a danger to the community or a flight risk. Those are the 2 exceptions to this. Even though it's not really written in here, so I think you caught something really, it could be challenged. Could somebody challenge excessive bail? Yes, they could challenge that as part of their process rights. So you caught something really good there, by the way. That was a good eye. But judges won't put somebody on the street that they think is going to do another crime or run. Right? And so that they take that into consideration. It's a tough call though, and you can challenge it. Yeah, good catch. All right, so now you've been through the amendments that guarantee your rights under the law. And remember, it's there to protect the accused. I've often heard it said this way: it's better that a guilty person goes free than an innocent person goes to jail. And I'm begging you, respect the jury verdict. You don't have to agree with it, but you have to respect it. And a lot of people don't even understand how the system works. And they try people in public. They try people based on rumor and innuendo and things they've heard and something online. And they weren't the jury in the room for 2 solid weeks, listening to 48 witnesses and hearing both the defense and the prosecution make their cases. The only people, we the people, asked those people to sacrifice on our behalf. Oh, one more thing I got to say. One of your acts of citizenship is that if you're called to jury duty, that you serve jury duty. If you're a citizen and they ask you to be on a jury, you need to be on the jury. It's one of your obligations as a citizen. It's one of the few things that we're all obligated to do. By the way, that's on your state test too, right? So you got to pay your taxes and you got to serve on a jury fast, right? Now, what if you've got brain surgery for somebody tomorrow and they want you to sit on the jury? And if you can't find somebody to do that surgery for you, they will let you out. There's reasons. While you can say, listen, I can't be on the jury because of this and this. And okay, so we'll catch you next time. But I've interviewed for 3 juries and I was on 1 jury. And trust me, hey, can I tell you the truth? You want to serve on a jury. Once you see what it's really like, you'll appreciate the system even more. You can actually go watch trials down at the courthouse. They're public. You got to go through the scanners and all that kind of stuff, you know. What if a jury, in this case, gets bribed? What do you have? A mistrial, right? Or if somebody's threatened, you know, like they had, you guys remember the mafia trials, right? Yeah.
Essentially, here, let me either bribe or threaten you and your family.
He is the classic case. Now, they will protect those witnesses and put them in witness protection programs, give them a new identity and move them to a different part of the country to protect you from that kind of thing. So if you're going to be a witness and you feel like, you know, my life's in danger here if I do this, there's witness protection programs for that, right? Or there's police surveillance of your home and that kind of stuff that they can do to provide you protection too. So yeah, it goes both ways. So yeah, Al Capone is the classic case, isn't he? What he did to manipulate those courts. What did they finally convict him of? And it wasn't murder, it wasn't drugs, it wasn't alcohol, prohibition, whatever it was, what? Tax evasion. He got in court.
How many years?
Life. He's in Alcatraz. You go to Alcatraz sometime. Most infamous prison in America. But here's the thing, he had this lavish lifestyle, whatever, and showed no tax receipts because all of his money was made illegally. So they're saying, this doesn't add up. Shouldn't you have paid some tax? And they got him on tax evasion because they couldn't get him on anything else. It was always, that person did it, that person did it. It was, he set them up to do it, but there wasn't a direct link to him that they could prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So when he showed up for this one trial, it was a murder trial, he was going to get off. He knew he was going to get off. And all of a sudden the prosecutor said, oh yeah, you know what you're on trial for, right? Tax evasion. And his lawyers were not ready. In his preliminary hearing, they said, yeah, we're worrying about tax evasion here. Wait a minute, not murder, not, you know, being a criminal boss and having, you know, this. No, we want to know why you haven't paid your taxes. That was a federal crime. The state crime of Illinois. Illinois couldn't get him. Illinois could not get him, even though he was the crime boss.
Everyone knew that he was. Yet
But-
no evidence.
But if you testified against him and you were one of his mob guys, whew, good luck.
Goodbye.
Yeah, Al Capone, read about him. He's a fascinating character, no question about it.
Have you seen the YouTube video Oversimplified the Prohibition?
No, what's it called?
Oversimplified the Prohibition.
No, but I'd love to see that.
He makes it funny, yet it's also.
Send me,